The day had been gentle, and now it was slowly folding itself away. The last golden threads of sunlight lingered at the horizon, stretching across the fields in fading warmth before finally sinking into soft twilight. The traveler, neither hurried nor restless, simply curious and calm, stood at the doorway of a small wooden cottage. Behind them was the safe glow of the home's hearth, steady and warm, while before them stretched the wide, waiting night. The air was cool, carrying with it the faintest fragrance of wildflowers that still held the memory of the sun. Each breath felt fresh, as if the earth itself had exhaled in relief after a long day beneath the golden sky. The grass bent slightly under the evening breeze, whispering in quiet voices, as though the meadows were telling stories to one another. Above, the sky deepened from pale blue to violet, and then, like ink spreading across parchment, to a deep and endless indigo. The traveler stepped out into the dusk. Each footfall pressed softly against the earth, leaving barely a mark. Fireflies, tiny lanterns of the night, flickered to life around the edges of the meadow. Their glow rose and fell like gentle heartbeats, adding to the feeling that the world was not empty but quietly alive, slowly shifting into its nighttime rhythm. Somewhere in the distance an owl called out, its voice low and steady like a keeper of secrets. The sound was not startling but comforting, an announcement that the night had truly arrived. Crickets began their steady chorus in the tall grass, their voices weaving into the growing symphony of darkness. The traveler paused, listening as though each sound were an invitation. There was no destination in mind, only the journey itself. The traveler knew this walk was not about reaching anywhere in particular. It was about listening, about breathing, about following the gentle pull of night wherever it wished to lead. So they continued on, leaving behind the familiar glow of the cottage until it became only a soft dot of warmth on the horizon, blending with the fireflies and stars. The path stretched ahead, narrow, winding, but kind. It was lined with wildflowers that leaned gently in the night breeze, their petals folding in as though preparing for sleep. Some of them, touched by moonlight, glimmered faintly, as if holding secret sparks within. The traveler brushed their hand lightly along the edges of the flowers, not picking them, only feeling the soft brush of life beneath their fingertips. Overhead, the first stars began to appear, one by one. At first they seemed shy, faint pinpricks barely piercing the violet sky. But as twilight deepened, more stars joined until they formed a quiet gathering, a soft assembly of light. Each star seemed to hum in silence, a vibration felt more than heard. The traveler tilted their head back and breathed deeply, feeling the sky open wide above them. The moon, pale and round, slowly rose at the horizon. It was not in a rush. It climbed gracefully, casting a silver glow across the fields. Under its light, the world transformed. The traveler's shadow stretched long and thin across the ground, moving softly with each step. The blades of grass glistened as though each one had been dipped in frost or sprinkled with tiny diamonds. Even the air itself felt gentler, more tender, as though the night were leaning in close to whisper lullabies to anyone willing to listen. The traveler came upon a wooden fence, old but sturdy, and leaned against it for a moment. Beyond it lay a field of wheat, tall and golden even in the moonlight. The stalks swayed together in unison, creating a hushed, rhythmic sound, like 1,000 voices breathing in harmony. The traveler closed their eyes and simply listened, letting the steady motion wash over them. It was almost like standing beside an ocean made of earth, the waves not of water but of swaying grain. Time seemed softer here. Minutes stretched like ribbon, unhurried and calm. The traveler could not tell if the stars had multiplied or if their own eyes had simply grown more accustomed to the night. Constellations began to form, familiar patterns scattered across the sky. A bear, a hunter, a river of stars spilling endlessly across the heavens. Each one seemed to pulse with quiet energy, as if they were alive, watching and waiting. Somewhere nearby, a brook trickled over smooth stones, its water catching bits of moonlight as it moved. The sound was delicate, a silvery laughter weaving into the night's song. Drawn to it, the traveler walked closer and crouched by the stream's edge. The water was cool and clear, and when they dipped their fingers into it, it carried the chill of night itself, as if it had traveled far from hidden mountains to reach this quiet place. The traveler lingered, watching the ripples widen and fade. A frog leapt softly from the bank into the water, vanishing with barely a splash. A pair of moths circled overhead, their pale wings fluttering like scraps of paper drifting on the wind. Everything moved slowly, quietly, as if the entire world had agreed not to disturb the stillness of the hour. When the traveler finally rose and continued, the path led upward toward a gentle hill. Each step was unhurried, steady, like breathing. As they climbed, the air grew even cooler, carrying with it the scent of pine from a forest not far away. The hill was not steep, but it was high enough to give a view over the meadows and fields. At the top, the traveler paused and looked back. The cottage was now far behind, no longer visible, replaced by the vastness of night. The land spread out like a dark quilt stitched with silver rivers, golden fields, and patches of glowing fireflies. Above, the stars stretched endlessly, spilling their light as if they had no end. And there, standing on the crest of the hill, the traveler felt as though they had taken their first true step into the night. The journey had begun, not hurried, not planned, but gently unfolding, like a story whispered by the world itself. The night held countless paths, countless wonders waiting to be discovered, and the traveler, with steady breath and a heart open to the silence, felt ready to follow wherever the moonlight might lead. From the crest of the hill, the traveler noticed how the land seemed to draw them onward, as though unseen hands were guiding their steps. Beyond the rolling meadows and fields lay a darker shape on the horizon, a forest, quiet and deep, waiting beneath the silver wash of moonlight. Its trees rose in graceful shadows, their branches swaying gently, as if already whispering secrets to the night. With unhurried steps, the traveler descended the hill. The grass rustled around their ankles, and the cool air carried a sense of anticipation, as though the night itself held its breath. The path meandered, never straight but always kind, leading them closer to the forest's edge. Each footfall was soft, cushioned by earth and moss, as though the land wished to make the traveler's journey light and effortless. The forest welcomed them slowly. At its border, tall oaks and pines leaned protectively together, their trunks rising like ancient guardians. Their leaves rustled faintly, though no breeze stirred. The sound was gentle, almost like a chorus of voices speaking in tones too soft for words. It was not frightening, not secretive, but comforting, like the hum of lullabies sung long ago. The traveler stepped beneath the first arching branches. The air shifted immediately, cooler, heavier with the scent of pine and damp earth. A quiet hush settled over them, not silence, but the deep, tender stillness of a place alive in its own way. The moonlight filtered through the canopy in scattered patches, dappling the ground in pale silver. Shadows played gently across the path, moving like soft ripples of water. Deeper within, the forest revealed its night dweller. Fireflies drifted between the trunks, their lights flickering in delicate patterns. They rose and fell, circling one another in slow dances, painting trails of gold in the darkness. The traveler lifted a hand, and one firefly hovered close for a moment, glowing brighter as though curious. Then it drifted away, joining the soft procession that guided the path ahead. Owls shifted on their branches, their round eyes gleaming with quiet wisdom. One hooted low, a sound that echoed gently between the trees, steady and reassuring. From somewhere high above came the rustle of wings as a small flock of nightbirds passed silently overhead, their feathers barely touching the air. The forest was not asleep. It was awake in its own way, alive with creatures who belonged to the dark. The traveler paused to listen. From beneath the ferns came the faint rustle of tiny feet, perhaps a rabbit finding its burrow, or a hedgehog padding softly toward its nest. The gentle splash of water trickled from somewhere deeper within, promising a stream ahead. And all around, beneath these individual sounds, there was the steady, low hum of the trees themselves. It was a sound not made with voices or wind, but with presence. It felt as though the trees remembered everything, every sunset, every rainfall, every bird that had nested in their branches. Their whispers carried the weight of time, and they shared it freely with anyone willing to listen. The traveler laid a hand against one of the trunks, feeling the cool, rough bark beneath their palm. They closed their eyes, breathing in deep. For a moment, they thought they could feel the slow, steady rhythm of the tree's life, like a heart beating far beneath the surface, patient and eternal. It was not a sound, not even a clear thought, but a feeling. You are safe here. You are not alone. Smiling softly, the traveler continued deeper. The path wound gently, curving past clusters of ferns and moss-covered stones. Each step brought them farther from the open fields and deeper into the embrace of the forest, where shadows swayed gently and light glimmered like scattered jewels. The air was rich with scent, pine, damp soil, the faint sweetness of unseen flowers that only bloomed at night. Soon they reached the stream they had heard before. It wound like a ribbon of silver through the trees, its surface reflecting fragments of moonlight. The water moved slowly, singing a quiet melody as it slipped between smooth stones. Kneeling at the bank, the traveler dipped their fingers into the current. It was cool, refreshing, and seemed to carry a kind of quiet energy, as though the water itself had gathered dreams along its journey and now shared them with anyone who touched it. The traveler lingered, watching tiny fish dart through the clear shallows, their scales flashing faintly in the moonlight. A frog sat nearby on a lily pad, perfectly still, its wide eyes glimmering like twin pearls. When the traveler looked at it, the frog blinked once, as if in greeting, before leaping softly into the stream with barely a splash. The ripples widened, then faded, restoring the water's glassy color. The fireflies gathered more thickly here, rising from the grasses in small clouds, their lights pulsing in unison. It was as though they were breathing together, glowing brighter and dimmer in a steady rhythm. The traveler sat beside the stream, simply watching, their thoughts slowing until they too felt caught in that gentle rhythm. In, out, bright, dim, like the quiet beating of a heart or the steady rise and fall of sleep. Eventually the path called it. The traveler rose and followed it, crossing the stream by stepping over a series of smooth stones. The sound of water faded behind them as the forest deepened. The trees grew taller here, their branches intertwining so thickly that only threads of moonlight filtered through. The ground was soft with layers of fallen leaves, cushioning each step. It was darker here, but not frightening. The air was thick with stillness, and the hum of the forest seemed louder, more present. The traveler felt as though they were walking through a dream itself, where every sound and every shadow had meaning. Sometimes they thought they saw shapes, figures moving between the trees, forms of light and shadow, but when they looked directly, there was nothing. Yet the feeling was not of loneliness. Rather, it was of companionship, as though unseen friends walked quietly at their side. At last, the path opened into a small clearing. Moonlight poured freely here, bathing the clearing in silver. In the center stood a single ancient oak, its branches sprawling wide like arms stretched in welcome. Beneath it, the grass was soft and thick, glowing faintly in the light. The traveler stepped into the clearing and felt an immediate sense of calm, as though the oak had drawn all the forest's whispers into this single space. They sat beneath the tree, leaning against its sturdy trunk. Above, the branches framed the stars, creating a natural window into the heavens. The hum of the forest continued all around, joined now by the gentle lull of night insects and the occasional call of an owl. The traveler breathed deeply, eyes half closed, listening as the whispers of the forest wove into a lullaby not meant to end, only to soothe. The night deepened, and with it the traveler's sense of peace. They knew this was only one part of the journey, one passage through the long dream of night. Yet already they felt lighter, calmer, as if the forest had wrapped them in unseen arms. When they finally rose to continue, the oak seemed to sigh gently, leaves rustling in farewell, though the whisper lingered. "Go on, the night has more to show you." With steps as soft as the fireflies' glow, the traveler left the clearing and followed the path onward, deeper still into the moonlit journey. The forest path stretched onward, winding gently through the trees, but the air began to change as the traveler walked. It carried with it a new scent, salt, cool, and sharp, mingling with the sweetness of pine. The whispers of the forest grew quieter, replaced by another sound in the distance. At first it was only the faintest murmur, like breath against the edge of silence. Then, as the traveler walked further, it grew steadier, deeper, a rhythm that rose and fell in endless patience. The traveler smiled softly, for they knew this sound. It was the voice of the sea. The path sloped downward, and the trees thinned until the canopy broke up. Moonlight poured freely now, spreading across a wide expanse. Ahead stretched a shoreline, pale with sand that glowed silver under the night sky. Beyond it, the ocean stretched endlessly, a dark mirror reflecting the stars above. Each wave moved with slow grace, rolling forward to kiss the sand before drawing back again, leaving trails of foam like lace upon the shore. The travelers stepped out of the forest and onto the beach. The sand was cool beneath their feet, soft and fine, giving way gently with each step. They walked closer to the water's edge and stood still, listening. The ocean's lullaby was unlike any other sound. It was steady, eternal, carrying no urgency, no rush. The waves had been singing this song since time began, and they would continue long after. It was the sound of rest, of timelessness, of being carried without effort. The air here was filled with life. A breeze drifted across the surface of the water, cool and refreshing, carrying with it the taste of salt. Overhead, the stars shone brighter than ever, their light scattering across the rippling waves. The moon floated above the horizon, round and luminous, its reflection stretching across the ocean like a silver pathway. It seemed to beckon the traveler forward, as if inviting them to follow its glow across the water, and waiting at the edge of the shore was a small wooden boat. It was simple, weathered yet steady, resting gently in the shallow waves. No oars lay beside it, yet the traveler felt no concern. Somehow they knew the boat was ready for them, that it would carry them where they needed to go. Stepping lightly, the traveler climbed into the vessel and settled onto the smooth wooden bench. The boat shifted gently under their weight, then steadied, as if acknowledging its new passenger. Without a push, without a hand to guide it, the boat began to drift. The waves carried it forward with quiet assurance, pulling it away from the shore. The traveler leaned back, letting the rhythm of the sea cradle them. Each rise and fall of the boat was like the rocking of a cradle, slow and soothing, a motion that seemed designed for rest. The shoreline grew smaller behind them, until it melted into the darkness. Ahead lay only the vast stretch of the midnight ocean, endless and calm. The traveler did not feel fear. Instead, there was only peace, a sense of surrender to something greater, something gentle. Beneath the surface, lights began to shimmer. At first they appeared like faint glimmers, as though stars had fallen into the water. But as the traveler looked closer, they saw schools of fish glowing softly in the depths, their scales alight with blues and greens, moving in graceful patterns. They swam together in spirals and waves, painting living constellations beneath the sea. Every so often one would leap briefly above the surface, scattering droplets of silver before vanishing again into the water. The traveler leaned over the edge of the boat, watching the glowing shapes drift by. The sight was mesmerizing, like watching dreams made visible. Each light seemed to pulse gently, like breathing. In, out, bright, dim. The rhythm matched the rhythm of the waves until everything felt woven into one great lullaby. Then, from the depths, a shape rose larger than the rest. A dolphin surfaced beside the boat, its sleek body glistening with moonlight. It exhaled softly, a spray of mist catching the starlight like a brief burst of glitter. Another dolphin appeared beside it, and then another, until a small pod surrounded the boat. Their movements were smooth, joyful, unhurried. They leapt and dove in arcs of silver, their bodies glowing faintly in the starlight. The traveler laughed softly, the sound blending with the ocean's song. The dolphins seemed to play not just for themselves, but for their companion drifting in the boat. For a while, the boat and dolphins moved together, carried across the waves in harmony. Then, as silently as they had appeared, the dolphins turned and vanished back into the sea, leaving behind only the faint shimmer of ripples. The boat continued on. Above, the stars seemed brighter, closer, as though leaning down to watch. Constellations stretched across the sky, forming patterns that mirrored the glowing fish below. The traveler tilted their head back and felt a deep stillness inside, as if their heart were beating in time with the stars. The moon's reflection stretched ahead of them, still guiding, still calling. The boat drifted along this silver path as though it were a road laid just for them. The traveler closed their eyes for a moment and simply breathed. The air was cool, the sound of the sea steady, the rocking of the boat unending. It was impossible to know how long they drifted like this, minutes, hours, or perhaps forever. Time did not matter here. When they opened their eyes again, the horizon had shifted. Ahead, rising gently from the water, was the shape of land. A hill stood silhouetted against the starlit sky, its slopes dark but its crest touched by the glow of the moon. The boat moved steadily toward it, carrying the traveler as if this had always been its destination. The closer they came, the clearer the sound of the land became. Grass whispered in the breeze. Somewhere far above, a nightbird sang. The boat glided softly against the shore, resting upon the sand with barely a sound. The journey across the ocean had ended, but another part of the journey was ready to begin. The traveler stepped out, their feet sinking gently into the sand once more. They turned back briefly, placing a hand on the boat in silent thanks. Then, without hesitation, they began walking toward the hill that rose before them, guided still by moonlight, by starlight, by the gentle song of the night. The sea whispered behind them, endless, eternal, but no longer calling. Its lullaby lingered in their heart, a steady rhythm that would remain with them as they walked. The hill awaited, and with it, the final embrace of the stars. The hill rose gently from the shoreline, its slopes blanketed in soft grasses that shimmered under the moonlight. The traveler began to climb, each step unhurried, steady as though the earth itself guided their pace. The night air here was crisp but tender, carrying scents of salt from the ocean below and the sweetness of unseen blossoms growing in the dark. Every breath was cool and refreshing, as if each inhale washed away the remnants of the day. The sound of the ocean faded behind them, replaced by the quiet hush of open land. Crickets sang faintly from the tall grasses, and somewhere in the distance, a night bird gave a single lilting call before falling silent again. The hill seemed wrapped in a hush of anticipation, as though it knew the traveler had come for something important. Not a discovery of the world, but a discovery of stillness, of peace. The climb was not steep, nor difficult, but long enough to feel like a journey. With each step, the traveler looked upward, watching the stars stretch across the sky in endless patterns. They glittered more brightly now, as though each star was leaning closer, peeking down to watch the travelers approach. The moon had climbed higher too, glowing like a guardian lantern above, its light spilling over the slopes and guiding the way without fail. At last, the traveler reached the crest of the hill, and there the world opened wide. The land stretched in every direction, rolling meadows and distant forests painted in silver light. The ocean sparkled faintly at the horizon, a dark blanket stitched with silver threads, but it was the sky that held the traveler's gaze. From this height, the heavens seemed impossibly vast, a great canopy of stars spilling endlessly in all directions. The Milky Way shimmered like a river of light flowing across the dark expanse. Constellations arched proudly, their shapes familiar yet new, as if they had been drawn freshly for this very night. The traveler lowered themselves onto the grass at the hill's peak. The ground was soft, springy, and fragrant with the faint scent of wild herb. Lying back, they gazed upward, letting the stars fill their vision. It was as though the earth had disappeared beneath them, and only the sky remained endless and comforting. And then something remarkable happened. The stars began to hum. It was not a sound carried on the air, but a vibration felt deep within, the same kind of resonance the traveler had sensed in the forest's trees, the same rhythm they had heard in the ocean's waves. Each star pulsed faintly, glowing a little brighter, then dimmer, in perfect harmony. Together they created a melody too vast for words, a song older than time, soft and gentle, yet infinite. The traveler listened, their hearts slowing to match the rhythm. In, out, bright, dim, the lullaby of the stars wrapped around them like a blanket, warm despite the night air. It was a sound that spoke of safety, of belonging, of rest. As they listened, the constellations seemed to come alive. The bear stretched across the sky, lumbering slowly, protective and calm. The hunter lowered his bow, no longer searching, only rest. The river of stars flowed gently, carrying with it dreams and quiet promises. It was as if the heavens themselves had become storytellers, sharing their tales not in words, but in light and song. The traveler closed their eyes briefly, imagining what the stars might say if they could speak. Perhaps they would tell of journeys across endless skies, of watching countless lives unfold beneath them. Perhaps they would whisper of time, how it stretched unbroken and how all things found their place within it. Or perhaps they would say nothing at all, because their presence was enough. When the traveler opened their eyes again, they noticed a single star shining brighter than the rest. It seemed closer, larger, as though it had chosen to descend just for them. Its glow flickered warmly, almost like the fireflies in the forest, almost like the lantern light of home. For a moment, the traveler thought they could hear it more clearly than the others, its hum distinct, steady, and kind. And in that sound there was a message, not in words, but in feeling. You have journeyed far enough. You have listened, you have breathed, you have rested. Now let the night carry you the rest of the way. The traveler smiled softly, their body relaxing deeper into the grass. The stars' light wrapped around them, tender and protective. Their eyes grew heavy, not with exhaustion, but with peace, as though the very weight of the sky was pressing gently upon them, guiding them into rest. The night grew deeper, yet it no longer felt vast or endless. It felt close, like an embrace. The hum of the stars blended with the rhythm of the ocean, still echoing in memory, with the whispers of the forest carried still in their breath. All of it wove together into a single lullaby, gentle, endless, eternal. The travelers' breath slowed deep and steady. The grass cradled them, the sky covered them, and the stars kept watch. The journey was complete, though in truth it had never been about reaching anywhere at all. It had been about walking slowly, listening deeply, and finding stillness within. And so, under the embrace of 1,000 stars, the traveler drifted. Not away, not lost, but inward, into the quiet dream the night had been guiding them toward from the very beginning. The stars whispered one last time, their light flickering like 1,000 soft candles. Rest now. You are safe, you are home. And the traveler obeyed. Their eyes closed, their bodies softened, their heart beat gently, slowly, until it too joined the great rhythm of the night. The moon climbed higher, the stars shimmered on, and the hill lay still. The travelers slept, wrapped in the eternal lullaby of the universe.